Welcome to Letters from the Chosens. I am Naomi Major, and today we're going to actually continue talking about boundaries. Before we discuss having boundaries within ourselves, establishing healthy boundaries for ourselves, but today I want to get into establishing boundaries with other people and in how we interact. Before we get into it, I'm going to go over the reflection questions. I hope these questions help you to think about your own journey and where you are right now in life and how you can establish boundaries to help have healthy relationships and long-lasting relationships with those within your life, family, friends, colleagues, all of them. So number one, what does healthy relationship look like? Two, what's most challenging about having boundaries or establishing boundaries? Number three, what are healthy boundaries you need to establish in your life? Okay, let's get into it. Every story is important, and every story needs to be heard by someone, whether an audience of 1 or 1 million. Our stories are valuable because we have no idea the ripple effect it can have on generations to come. So join me in listening to stories of how unlikely people became unexpectedly connected. Their stories reveal that we were never meant to face life alone. And in helping one another, we end up finding ourselves and our purpose. Welcome to Letters from the Chosens. Before we're looking at boundaries of first managing my personal space. But now when it comes to the people, I'm managing the access to my personal space. So when I think of other people where I'm establishing boundaries with them, I'm thinking about managing the access that I give others to my personal space, basically to my soul, if we want to look at it like that. You know, the access that I give people to my mind, my heart, my will, and we can include our body, our spirit, the access that we give. So the first thing that I had mentioned in our prior conversation is that boundaries are really meant for us, that it's never about the other person, right? Jesus could be around all these types of people, the tax collectors, the prostitute, the thieves, the murderers, but his heart was holy. He was pure, right? Like he did not give in to any temptation. But for us, we're progressing and we've been made holy, but we're learning to walk it out. And when we are tempted, sometimes we do sin, but Jesus was not, right? What it reveals to us is that the problem is really within self. It's really within us. It's because of the evil desires within our hearts, or what we allow to come in when we listen to the enemy's voice. And so it first begins with managing and taking care of our personal space, our soul first and foremost, and establishing boundaries there before we ever look at, hey, what is this person doing? Or what did they do? What did they say? Or how did they treat me? So the first thing that I've learned is that everyone needs boundaries and that we have to establish boundaries with everyone. This was something that I learned when I first started serving in ministry, volunteering at this one church. And I was single, I was young. I understood that my pastor was married, and even though he done nothing wrong, I needed to walk in righteousness. So even when it came to texting, I have a question for him or something like that, I would put in my godmother into the text, my spiritual godmother into the text each time, so that there was another person, so that even someone who I trust, I know they walk in righteousness, I don't want to give the appearance of anything. I was leading a discipleship group with middle schoolers and with their parents, with their fathers. I avoided texting one-on-one with any of the fathers, but I would include another person in that message. I would be intentional about texting the mother, and that was just a way of establishing boundaries with everyone. It doesn't mean that you establish boundaries with just people who you don't like or you think don't like you, or you establish boundaries with people who you know are sinning or doing something unlawful or anything like that, or you don't agree with their behavior, or you have different belief systems. It's not about that. Boundaries are needed with everyone, even those you respect and honor, even those who are walking in righteousness and integrity, which they all were. They hadn't done anything bad. But we establish boundaries for righteousness and to avoid any appearance of sin. And that was something when I first started serving in ministry at a young age, as a young woman, was that I need to have boundaries with everyone, and that boundaries are not a bad thing. Now, I also learned that even with those that I love, I think my closest friends, I have to have boundaries with them too. And God gave me this great analogy. So one of my treats that I've been having is Lactaid ice cream, and they only got like 3 or 4 flavors, but they got a cookies and cream that is amazing, because it's like the chocolate and the vanilla get boring, and so you need some flavor. So they've got a really delicious cookies and cream, lactose-free ice cream that I will get and indulge on. God was showing me that even though I love this ice cream so much and I can have it and it doesn't bother my stomach, too much of it can hurt me, right? Too much of that sugar can give me a stomach ache. Have that every single day and I gotta watch out for diabetes, right? That even a good thing, even something that I love and I enjoy that doesn't hurt me, too much of it can eventually cause harm. So that God was using it to show me that you need boundaries. Even with those you love and adore, you should have boundaries in order to keep the relationship healthy, righteous before God, avoiding any sin or temptation, fulfilling His purpose for your own sake, for your own healing and process, and just to receive what He has for you. Boundaries are needed, even with those we love and adore. Not because we don't like them, but actually because we love them so much and we want to honor them, we set those boundaries. The other aspect of it was that boundaries are set based on what it produces in our lives. So the boundaries aren't really because of that person. It's not because I don't like you. It shouldn't be based on any resentment or hatred or unforgiveness, but it's based on what their actions produce. So we always look at fruit. And we look at what the condition it creates. I'm not setting boundaries based on that person because they're so and so or da 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 da. I mean, that's a part of it, of respect or honoring certain positions. But when it comes to character, when it comes to choices, that's really what we're setting boundaries around, is what does that action or behavior produce? Someone is really volatile, and I had someone in my life who was that way, certain thing not done a certain way, it ended up becoming an issue and a struggle and a fight. So the atmosphere, the conditions change. It becomes tense. There's anger, there's frustration. I mentioned with me, defensiveness producing in me, and resentment and bitterness. So with that, I'm establishing boundaries for what is being produced in the atmosphere and the condition that's being produced. And it's not against the person. And that's the way to look at it, to not make the person an enemy. There's this saying, and I think I heard it recently too. It was that you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can control whether it lands and builds a nest on your head. Something like that, right? So that whole saying is the idea of you can't stop others from doing what they're doing, from talking, from doing this, from doing that. But your access that you give them, you can control. So that has taught me that establishing boundaries is all about the access that I give to someone. And it's not about keeping them out. It's not about fighting against them, but it's about the access I give to that personal space that I have. I'm in control of my personal space. And that when I use personal space, I'm thinking about my heart, my mind, my soul, my will, all of that, which is part of my soul. But I'm considering that space which I inhabit that makes up who I am. And I control who has access to it and what they put into it and what I allow them to put into it or to do to me. And so in that part, it comes in my hands. And so managing the access to my personal space, to my soul, to my spirit, to my body means that I establish boundaries. It's not against that person. I manage the access that they have. They can still be in my life, but they may not have access to be in my house. They may not be in my bedroom, that type of thing, where that's in my control to establish those boundaries of the access that I give to people in my life. So if I give people access that I should not give, I'm accountable for that. I'm accountable for that because I gave them that access. So really, when we set boundaries, and when I have to set boundaries, I have to not look at it as I'm doing anything against someone. It's not, I hate you, I don't like you, but I establish boundaries. I manage the access I give to others for their sake and for my sake. And even when I was given the example of my pastor that I worked with, boundaries were really important for righteousness' sake, right? And so in managing the access and something simple like when I send a text message, I also understood the sacredness of marriage, the covenant of marriage. I also knew about where people could violate marriage. And for me, I wanted a lasting marriage. And if I married, I never, ever wanted a divorce. I'd rather not marry than have a divorce. So I really saw marriage as sacred, and it wasn't anything I stepped into lightly. I also have to just give that to my parents, have a strong and healthy and loving marriage, and they've modeled it for me. So in establishing boundaries, it's really also to just protect the other person. It protects them in keeping them righteous before God. It can protect them from sin or the appearance of sin. In establishing boundaries, it allows them to fulfill their purpose, be who God wants them to be, and do the things they have to do. Overstepping boundaries could just be constantly showing up or constantly taking somebody out. Hey, let's go out, let's go out, let's go out, let's go out. But they need to be home, right? They don't need to be out. God wants them home. Oh, wait, they should be at work, or, oh, they're in school, they should be studying, right? So establishing boundaries also can keep us from taking others out of their purpose, and it keeps them from taking us out of our purpose. So it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And it's not, I'm against them or they're against me. It's like, no, I'm protecting what God has given me in a healthy way, but I also in turn am protecting what God has given to them. I am my brother and sister's keeper. So I want to manage and guard my soul and my spirit and what I allow in and where I allow myself to go. And I also want to keep that in mind with others. So when someone says, hey, I can't talk after this time. Ooh, I got to honor that. I follow that boundary that has been established that they're trying to walk in. And we establish boundaries for people's healing process and what God is walking them through. And that has been for me where God was dealing with in 2014 rejection and insecurity, where he pointed out the root of it. So boundaries, we set it for ourselves, but we can also set it with others for them to be able to go through their process. So that's something, especially for people in situations where they're in blended families or foster or adoptive families, having boundaries can seem the opposite of what we want to do. And that was something that was hard for me because I saw boundaries as cutting people out or keeping people away. And I had to see boundaries are no, it's actually healthy. The more boundaries that I establish with people, not like having a ton of boundaries, but actually having boundaries with everyone and looking for where I could respect and honor boundaries with people, helped me to have healthier relationships with them. Right? I'm not constantly in their face or constantly demanding of their time or encroaching. And I'm not constantly pulling people out of their purpose in order to meet my temporary needs or wants or my every whim, because I am establishing healthy boundaries where I recognize, oh, this person is serving right now, so it's not a good time. Understanding, oh, my friend is married now, so I have to move different. I don't receive messages from them one-on-one. I have them and their significant other in my message. I'm honoring and establishing boundaries, and it's not just for my sake, for me walking, being right before God and how He wants me to be, but it's also in protecting that relationship, right? And it shows that I want it to succeed, that I don't want to do anything that would hinder it from being able to grow in the way that it should. And so, really, boundaries provide protection for us and for others, but boundaries allow God's plan, His good plan, to manifest, because we're not getting in the way of that. And I said, especially with, relationships and, it's definitely in my single season, I was really intentional with my boundaries, with just speaking with the opposite sex through text or message or things like that, or just being one-on-one, because I also understood that it was protecting them. It's protecting that man for the husband he's going to be, the position he's going to have. But it was also protecting me, guarding me for the man of God that I was waiting for, and I was waiting for my husband. So boundaries really protect us, to protect the other person, and it allows God to prepare us for where He wants us to be, and for us to receive the promises He wants us to receive, without anything challenging it that it shouldn't. Character-wise, one thing I want to say is that boundaries are good, and they're meant to help us and to help those who are along with us. And what boundaries looks like is, and I'll give example for me. This was, and I'd mentioned this before with my friend who had some toxic behaviors out, the drinking, all this stuff. And so what it looked like is that I don't go and hang out with this person in their car. Like, I don't allow them to pick me up because they would lie about where we would go. So boundaries can be shown in the space that you inhabit. I don't allow this person to pick me up, or I don't go to this person's house. I'm not privately alone with someone. That could be a boundary that you establish. That's with family. Listen, I got boundaries with family. And that's with friends, and that could be colleagues and all of that. It also can look like you don't talk to that person all the time. And that means I'm not constantly calling or texting someone. I'm not having private conversations outside of our shared communities. So it could be I spend time with this friend, with our friends group, but I'm not calling them and texting them one-on-one and having private conversations, because it could just be simply that, where their behavior, right, could be detrimental to you or pulling out of your purpose, or vice versa, your behavior, right? Again, when we talk about healthiness, so it could be establishing boundaries in that way. The boundaries that you establish in one season can help you in the next. So I put my husband in a text, and sometimes a male friend will text me one-on-one, and it's like, okay, they send me a message, but it's like, oh, now I reach out the next time they see I put my husband in it, and my husband knows what I was doing in my single season, I do in marriage to protect the relationship. Again, boundaries aren't always because anybody's doing anything bad, but it also just protects your righteousness, being right before God. It protects you from accusation, and it protects you from temptation of sin. Jesus was holy, and he didn't give in to any temptation, but I know that I could give in to temptation. So I had to set boundaries because I'm not Jesus. So I know I can fall. And so I have to have boundaries and I have to have accountability. Having boundaries can also look like you spend time with that person and another person in a room. You spend time with in a group setting and you don't do one-on-one. And that can really be good in family dynamics. If there's any family member that it may not be a healthy dynamic, and those fostered, adopted, we encounter a lot of situations like that. My biological family is now a part of my life. And so even that dynamic of establishing healthy relationship and boundaries, but still maintaining love and walking in love. I think it's always good to start there, whether it's people you know or you don't know. It's always good to kind of start off with a boundary of, let me get to know this person in the presence of another person or in a group, getting to know that. And that establishes healthy boundaries and it gives accountability. So I hope that was helpful in having another perspective of what boundaries looks like when it comes to interacting with other people, that it's not about seeing them as an enemy. It's not about coming against them, but really the boundaries we establish are to manage the access that we give to to manage the access that we give to our soul, the access that I give others to my soul, to my spirit, to my body, and vice versa. Same as I manage that, I am my brother and sister's keeper, and I establish boundaries to manage the access that I have to someone's soul, spirit, body. It protects us both. And boundaries are needed for everyone in every situation, not because they've done anything wrong, but also just to protect them, and to keep them for wherever God is sending them. So boundaries really have to do with just maintaining integrity, but also maintaining people's purpose, that they continue in doing the work and the call that God has for them. Know that these are things that I'm walking out. The journey has been long. Like I'm telling you, this conversation started in 2014 and it's over 10 years going. And I constantly reflect, go back, and as I go through different seasons and testings, I look over what God has taught me. So something I would encourage people to do is to journal and to reflect, especially about what God teaches them through each situation or trial that they go through. And it helps you to continue walking in victory when you face similar obstacles. So remember that God loves you and He has chosen you to fulfill His good purpose. Until next time, be blessed.